Welcome to Stone Stories with me, Paige Nestich. Are you feeling tired, stressed, paranoid? Maybe you're living your best life, but just need a little escape. Everyone loves a story, and everyone needs a break. Sit back. Let me take you on a gemological journey. And while we're at it, let's get stoned. Welcome back to Stone Stories. This is episode 2, and I'm gonna let you in on a secret. I was so nervous last episode that I did not partake in the stoned part, and so now I'm just excited and happy and participating in the stoned part. So enjoy, and let's tell some stories, why don't we? There are gemstones people admire, and then there are gemstones people obsess over. For one of history's most powerful and enigmatic figures, there was only one stone that mattered. Not diamond, not ruby, not sapphire, emerald. Deep, vivid green, alive with color, filled with internal worlds, and unlike anything else on Earth. And for Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt, emerald wasn't just a gem. It was identity, power, legacy. This is the story of Cleopatra's emerald obsession and the science, myth, and ambition behind one of the most coveted gemstones in history. So emerald is my birthstone of May. It is my favorite stone for that only reason. I also like that it's green, but really, I thought, how cool is it to have that bright green stone as my birthstone? I just love that. And after researching for this episode, I am now obsessed with emeralds even more. So let's just start off with the stone itself. The emerald is a variety of the mineral beryl, the same family as aquamarine. Did you know that gemstones have families? They do. Their families are based on the chemical composition and the crystal structure. So just like a biological family shares genes, gems share chemical composition. That's their type of gene, okay? And while aquamarine and emeralds are familially related, it's their color that sets them apart from each other. So in aquamarine, for example, blue, emeralds are green. And not just any green. Its color comes from trace amounts of chromium and sometimes vanadium. These are elements that interact with light in a way that produces rich, saturated hues. But here's what makes emeralds truly fascinating. It's almost never perfect. Unlike diamonds, which are prized for clarity, emeralds are known for their inclusions, internal features formed during growth. These inclusions are so common, they even have a nickname. The Gardine, French for garden. Did I pronounce that correctly? Most likely not. Moving on. Look into an emerald and you might see wisps, fractures, tiny crystals, a landscape frozen in time. To a gemologist, these aren't flaws. They're identity, proof that the stone is natural, unique, and alive with history. But take a second to sit on that. Inclusions, imperfections, cracks, and differences. They make emeralds even more interesting, more valuable, more authentic. What could be better for the mental health than to embrace yourself the way a gemologist embraces emeralds? We're looking not for perfection. We're looking for makes what you. I just think that's the cutest darn thing. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Okay, let's get back to it. The reason emeralds form more inclusions than other gemstones is because of how they form. It's how they're growing. So let's just slow ourselves down, pump the gemological brakes here for a second, talk a little bit about rock. Now, there are igneous rocks, which is tied to volcanic activity, magma that hardens and forms into rock directly from Earth's mantle. There is sedimentary rock, which is your layers of sediment or small fragments that stack on top of each other, harden over time, trap fossils. They're, really great geological timestamps. And then there's metamorphic rock. This is like the Gemini of rock formations. They do it all. They go both ways. Metamorphic rock is any type of rock that turns into a different type of rock. So let's say you have a piece of lava rock on the edge of the Pacific tectonic plate. And let's say that Pacific tectonic plate slides past the North American plate. And our tiny little rock was trapped in between those two giant tectonic plates, somewhere in that area. Now, that's kind of like the cookie crumb that gets trapped in between your couch cushions on a movie night, okay? You got like a little round, maybe it's not all the way firm, crumb, falls in between the couch cushions. Couch cushions are, rubbing back and forth. Same thing as our little lava rock. And while the rock was squeezed between those two moving plates, the stress of that shift may have heated our rock up. It underwent incredible pressure. Our little rock, or our little cookie crumb, began to take new form. Where your cookie crumb might come out of the couch cushions looking like a flat, dry crumb instead of the tasty, flavorful taste that you dropped, our little rock might also look a little differently when it settles down after it was squeezed between the two tectonic plates. It is a metamorphic rock where emeralds are formed. So emeralds also form under this incredible pressure that actually forces the rock to reshape while the emeralds are being formed. That's why it can trap all of these little things inside of the crystal when it's a completed gemstone. If you think forming emeralds is hard work, just imagine mining these delicate little crystals. Mining emeralds is extremely difficult and inefficient due to the fragility of the stone itself. The labor-intensive extraction techniques include hand tools and careful extractions of gems from quartz or limestone veins. Not to mention, finding one of these little emerald-filled veins in a limestone deposit might take years of exploration just to find one small dig site. So no wonder these incredible little gems were the prized possession of one of history's most glamorous girls, Cleopatra. Our Queen Cleopatra was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt. I am going to Google how to say that. Okay, I figured it out. Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt. She was a strategist, a diplomat, a symbol, and someone who understood the power of image. She began her reign at age 18, co-ruling with her 10-year-old brother after their father died. Now, she did marry her younger brother, but that was tradition at that time, so no judgment, just friendship. She had to do what she had to do, and she did it well. She was highly educated. She spoke several languages. She was actually the only ruler of the Ptolemaic Egypt. She's the only one who learned how to speak Egyptian. That's right, for 300 years, Greek Ptolemaic rulers were refusing to speak the Egyptian language. They spoke Greek, and that separated them from those they ruled. However, Cleopatra saw past that. She spoke the language of the people, and that demonstrated a deliberate shift to connect directly with the native Egyptians and also legitimize her as a true ruler. Everyone that came before her viewed themselves as Greek monarchs ruling over foreign people. Our girl Cleopatra was the first to embrace local culture in attempts to solidify her power of Egypt. I think she's brilliant. The advisors to her 10-year-old brother did not feel the same way. So they exiled her at age 20 to maybe 21. She was exiled, and she fled to Syria. While our girl was in exile, she met a man, Julius Caesar. Ever heard of him? Yeah. Cleopatra, the woman who spoke up to 9 languages, also spoke the language of men. and she became Julius Caesar's lover and ally, using his military strength to defeat her brother and regain her control. Once regaining power, our girl did not lighten up. She murdered her brother husband. She co-ruled with her son from the Julius Caesar situationship, and she later developed another lover-to-military alliance with Mark Antony, who gave her more children, more land, and more power. Cleopatra was a fourth, and she was not relying on her male cohorts to do all the heavy lifting for her. She created power in her own way, with emeralds. She inherited the land that emeralds were mined from when she came back into power, and she embraced all local interests to maintain loyalty from the Egyptians she ruled over, so naturally she also embraced the local gemstone, emeralds. Cleopatra didn't just wear emeralds, though. She claimed them. According to legend, she owned a particular emerald, unlike any other. The stone was thought to reveal truth and protect her from deception. When meeting with allies or rivals, Cleopatra would wear the emerald close to her skin, trusting it as a silent advisor. One night, a messenger arrived with urgent news, an offer of alliance that seemed too perfect, too good to be true. Cleopatra listened, watching closely. But it wasn't the man she was studying. It was the stone. As the messenger spoke, the emerald, normally glowing with a rich, steady green, was said to dull ever so slightly. Not dark, not cracked, just less alive. Cleopatra refused the offer, and days later she learned the truth, that the alliance had been a trap. That is giving the original Crystal Girl energy, okay? And Cleopatra, she was diligent on this belief. Now, her emerald mines were popular long before her reign, as the emerald mines located in the eastern desert near the Red Sea, they were actually have said to supply the entire ancient world with these green stones. So the same mines that spread emeralds through the Roman Empire and Babylon ended up later being known as Cleopatra's mines. This girl just took the rhetoric of emeralds and plastered her name all over it. Whether she discovered the emerald mines or simply exploited them more extensively, one thing is clear. She made emeralds synonymous with her reign. She wore them in jewelry, had them carved with her likeness, gifted them to foreign dignitaries as symbols of power and prestige. Emerald wasn't just decoration, it was messaging to her. Her obsession with emeralds wasn't passive. It was strategic, it was intense. The mines themselves were harsh, remote, and difficult to work. Extreme heat, limited water, dangerous conditions. This wasn't a fun place to be all day. Yet they were operated extensively under her rule. She was pretty serious. She was putting people to work and was not keeping up to the standard workplace code. Let's just say that. Emeralds have always been rare, but Cleopatra owned the rarity, and owning the rarity is power. It was addicting. By controlling the supply, Cleopatra controlled the narrative, and that became her sole mission. She wasn't just wearing beauty, she was controlling the access to it. There are even accounts suggesting she would have emeralds engraved with her image and given as diplomatic gifts, essentially turning gemstones into a political tool. But imagine not only giving a gemstone as a gift, engraving your faith on the gemstone to give as a gift. It takes me to like a wedding or a birthday party, and you get sent home with, a little party gift. Picture like pulling a gemstone with the host's face carved into it out of a little paper baggie. It's over the top, it's doing too much, and I freaking love it. And I also wondered how exactly these stones were being cut and who was cutting them at this time. So Apparently, the most talented gemstone artisans would have been selected to work on things like royal commissions, temple objects, and high-status jewelry for the elite. But if a cutter demonstrated precision, reliability, trustworthiness, they could be elevated to work with royal materials, like emeralds. This is what we talked about earlier, though. Emeralds are fragile little babies, and cutting them back then was much harder than today. There was no modern faceting machines, limited understanding of crystal structure, high risk of breaking very valuable stones. And because of this, emeralds in Cleopatra's time were usually polished and shaped, not faceted like modern gems today. Although there are no known authenticated emeralds from antiquity with Cleopatra's faces carved into them, there are many modern-day replicas. And to me, that is almost more incredible than if some of her original stones were still around. Obviously, I think it would be really cool to even just see a stone from antiquity in that way and understand how these incredible artisans were able to carve anything of likeness into something that small and delicate. But to me, it almost feels like replicated pieces based on stories from over 2,000 years ago is such an incredible amount of influence that I just can't comprehend. And I also can't comprehend what from today's day will hold that amount of significance 2,000 years into the future. So that a replicated glowing green stone bearing the face of a 18-year-old queen, I just think that's an incredible part of what she did in creating this story around her name and around her reign. It was also long before Cleopatra and long after her that emeralds have carried such deep symbolic meaning. In ancient cultures, it was associated with fertility, rebirth, eternal youth, and its green color connected it to life itself, to vegetation, renewal, and the cycles of nature. The ancient Egyptians believed emeralds represented immortality. Some were even buried with emeralds, hoping to carry that vitality into the afterlife. And later traditions claimed emeralds could reveal truth, protect against evil, and even allow the wearer to predict the future. That's also a pretty powerful thing to have believed, but in ancient times, emeralds were believed to hold the power of truth and foresight. One legend tells of rulers who would wear these talismans made of emerald, not just for beauty, but for the protection against deception. It was said that if a lover or a friend was unfaithful and lied, or a lie was spoken nearby, the emerald would lose its brilliance. Its vibrant green would fade as if the stone itself refused to tolerate dishonesty. A stone refusing to tolerate dishonesty. It's just something so magical to believe. And, there were people who were walking around with these talismans, protecting them with these green minerals. Now, scientifically, that's not how an emerald works per se, but psychologically, it speaks to how deeply people trusted and feared this stone. And it was not just the Egyptians that held these gems to such high regard. There's a story of wealthy Romans who would stare into emeralds after long days, not just to relax, but because they believed the stone could renew vitality and slow aging. Some even set emeralds into drinking vessels, believing that water or wine touched by the stone could carry its life-giving energy. To them, emerald wasn't just calming, it was restorative, almost like bottled youth. And then in medieval lore, emeralds were believed to grant foresight and prophecy. There's a tale that speaks of a scholar who wore an emerald ring while studying the stars. Over time, he began to experience vivid dreams, visions of events that had not yet happened. Convinced the emerald was the source, He used it during meditation, believing it opened a channel between the human mind and divine knowledge. I'm a little curious if the man was out there doing anything else while he was watching stars. Participating in any other kind of stones, per se. Anyways, despite its association with power and permanence, emerald is, as we've mentioned, fragile. Those beautiful inclusions, they also create internal weakness. Emerald ranks about a 7.5 to 8 on the Mohs hardness scale, which is pretty strong, but it's still prone to cracking. That's why many emeralds are treated with oils to improve their clarity and stability. And that's why emerald cutting is a very delicate process. In fact, the emerald cut, a rectangular shape with stepped faucets, was designed specifically to reduce stress on the stone. So here's the paradox. A gemstone that symbolizes strength is structurally delicate. A queen who projected control relied on something inherently vulnerable. I think that just sounds kind of beautiful. Now, some historians question whether all of Cleopatra's emeralds were actually emeralds. I call those historians haters. Just kidding. But the Egyptian mines often produced stones of lower quality, more opaque, less vibrant than the emeralds we see today from places like Colombia. There is speculation that some stones may have been fluorite or other minerals mistaken for emerald. So it's totally possible that the legend of Cleopatra's emerald obsession is partly shaped by perception, by naming, by storytelling. But in a way, that doesn't diminish the story, it enhances it, because it shows how powerful belief can be. If people believe it was an emerald, then guess what? It was an emerald. And our queen was shaping her own story, but she wasn't the only one who was all about emerald all the time, if you know what I mean. Okay? The indigenous people in what is now Colombia, especially the Muzo people, believed that emeralds were very, very sacred. To the Muzo, emerald weren't just stones. They were living symbols of sorrow, love, and origin. The mountains themselves were seen as sacred, holding emotional fragments of humanity. The story goes like this. Long before emeralds were mined, before they were traded, stolen, or set into crowns, they believed, the Muzo people, believed that the world began with two people, Fiora and Tina. They were not born the way we are. They were created, formed by the gods to walk the earth as the first man and woman, given life, land, and one simple rule: remain faithful to each other and to the balance of the world. For a time, they lived in harmony. The rivers flowed, the land provided, and the mountains stood quietly watching. But something changed. Temptation, curiosity, or perhaps something more human. Fiora broke that sacred rule. And in doing so, she broke something deeper. When Tina discovered the betrayal, his grief was overwhelming. Not anger, grief, and the kind that reshapes everything. In that sorrow, the world itself seemed to respond. Tina's life came to an end, and Fiora was left alone. She wandered into the mountains, consumed with regret, and that's where she began to cry. Not quietly and not briefly, but endlessly. Tears that carried guilt and love and loss and memory. And it was those tears that fell to the earth. But something impossible had happened. The tears, they didn't disappear into the soil. They hardened. They transformed into deep green crystals, growing with a life of their own. Emeralds. The Muzo people, the Muzo Mountains, rich with emeralds, and the emerald deposits were believed to be the resting place of Fiora herself. Her tears, scattered through the land, her story preserved in stone, So when you look into an emerald, you're not just seeing color. You're seeing a story of love and loss and consequence, a reminder that even the most beautiful things can come from heartbreak. And there's another layer to it too, because those tears, those emeralds hidden in the mountains of Muzo, they're not just legend. They're the result of something incredibly rare and very real. Colombian emeralds are some of the most unique in the world, not just because of their color, but because of how they form. Most emeralds grow in environments tied to magma and pressure underwent by metamorphic rock change, like we learned earlier. But Colombia is different. Here, emeralds form through a process involving hydrothermal fluids, hot, mineral-rich water moving through sedimentary rock. And when the right elements come together, under the right pressure and temperature, that's when emerald babies are born. And that's what gives Colombian emeralds that unmistakable green, that deep, almost glowing color that doesn't just sit on the surface, feels like it comes from within, almost like it's alive. So maybe the Muzo people weren't so far off. They saw that emotion in the stone. We see chemistry, but in a way we're both trying to explain the same thing. How something so beautiful could come from deep within the earth and still feel like it carries a story. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the Muzo region in the 1500s, they quickly discovered that indigenous people possessed vivid green stones, unlike anything seen in Europe. And although they didn't take much value to the story, the Spanish did demand to know where the emeralds came from. The Muzo people refused to reveal the location of their mines, and this led to brutal conflict. For years, the Spanish searched blindly through dense jungle and mountains, driven by stories of hidden emerald deposits. Eventually, after violent campaigns, they found the stones in the same mountains now known as one of the richest emerald sources in the world. And to the Spanish, it was a discovery. But to the Muzo, it was quite a loss. Emeralds clearly continued to captivate the world long after Cleopatra. The Colombian emeralds went on to flood European markets, reshaping the global gem trade. But Cleopatra's association remained. Our queen didn't go anywhere, okay? To this day, emerald is often linked with royalty, luxury, and power. And that connection traces back, at least in part, to her. So why does this story endure? Why are we still talking about Cleopatra and emeralds thousands of years later? Because it's not just about a gemstone. It's about what we project onto it. Emerald became an extension of Cleopatra's identity, her ambition, her control, her image, her boss babe energy all these years later. And in turn, she shaped how the world sees emerald. Even today, we look at a rich green stone. There's something regal about it, something intentional, something powerful. So what is Cleopatra's emerald really? Is it a mineral just shaped by geology, a political tool, a symbol of beauty and immortality? Or is it a reflection of one woman's ability to turn an object into a legacy? Here's a thought to leave you with. Gemstones don't create power. People do. But the right object, in the right hands, can amplify it. And the question is, if you had access to something rare, beautiful, and desired by the world, would you simply admire it, put it on your shelf, brag, post it in your Instagram story? Or would you use it to shape how the world sees you? Well, that concludes today's story. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you on the next stone story.